The wind was too still. It wasn't the kind of calm you hope for before a mission. It was the kind that made every instinct in your body tighten, waiting for something to go wrong. The hum of the radio, the crunch of our boots on the volcanic ash, it all sounded ordinary, routine. But it wasn't, not tonight. We were trained for chaos. Combat rescues, high-pressure extractions, the kind of operations that chew up rookies and spit out soldiers hardened by fire. Yet somehow this silence, this stillness pressing against my helmet unnerved me more than gunfire ever could. The air itself felt wrong, like the island was holding its breath, waiting for something to move. Then the radio crackled. A sharp burst of static cut through the quiet, followed by the clipped voice of command. Then nothing. Dead air. No hiss, no distortion, just gone. It was like someone had pulled the plug on the world. My heart skipped. A glitch, I told myself. Just a glitch. But deep down, I knew better. The silence that followed was too complete. Even the air seemed to grow heavier. I looked at my team, 6 men, all seasoned, all still. None of them said a word, but I could see it in their eyes. They felt it too. The sense that we had crossed some invisible threshold, we'd run 1,000 operations. We knew what it meant to be alert, to stay sharp. But this wasn't normal. It wasn't fear exactly. It was something deeper. Like the land itself was aware of us, watching. For the first time in a long while, I realized my training might not be enough. The mission suddenly felt small, meaningless against the weight of whatever was out there. Reality itself seemed thinner here, like something darker was bleeding through. I'd spent my life shutting out noise, fear, doubt, hesitation. Years of training made it second nature. Focus, execute, move. But Pohakua was different. Out here, surrounded by jagged lava fields and the ghostly silence of old eruptions, you couldn't block out the land. You could only feel it watching back. We were in the middle of nowhere, a black desert of volcanic rock stretching as far as the eye could see. Even the air had weight, thick with sulfur and memory. I'd fought through jungles and deserts, but nothing ever pressed on my mind the way this place did. It was like being swallowed by a dream you couldn't wake from. At first, it was easy to dismiss the unease. Routine recon near Kilauea, nothing new. But as the hours crawled by, the air seemed to shift. The silence deepened. The ground beneath our boots seemed to hum, alive with something ancient. We went through the motions, equipment checks, radio updates, tactical formations, but it felt wrong. Too quiet, too empty. Even the air pressure felt off, pressing on my chest, making every breath deliberate. I tried to tell myself it was fatigue, my mind playing tricks, but every instinct screamed otherwise. In places like this, you learn fast. Never ignore that feeling. The mission might be routine, but the unknown, that's where soldiers die. Routine can be both your comfort and your trap. It makes you predictable, safe, until the world decides to remind you who's really in control. Halfway through the patrol, the wind vanished entirely. The only sound was the faint crunch of our boots over the brittle ash. The quiet wasn't peaceful, it was suffocating. I could feel the silence pressing against my eardrums, a deep physical thing. And then, the world started to slip. At first it was small, a flicker of movement in the corner of my eye, a shadow where there shouldn't be one. The kind you tell yourself is nothing. But then the equipment started acting up. Radios dropped in and out, compasses spun, GPS coordinates jumped across the map. A glitch, maybe. Until it wasn't. Every piece of tech we had started to fail, one by one. The static grew louder. Even the satellite uplink blinked out. I told myself it was the terrain, interference, but the truth was gnawing at me. This wasn't equipment failure. It was something else, and that's when I noticed it. The absence, no birds, no insects, no distant wind through the rocks. Just a dead, unnatural silence. A silence that felt aware. The kind that doesn't just exist, it listens. We moved carefully, but tension coiled through every movement. My pulse pounded. Experience teaches you to trust your gut, and mine was screaming. Then we saw them. At first I thought they were reflections from the lava fields, heat mirages, tricks of the air. But no, these lights, they moved, slowly, deliberately, floating just above the cracked black ground, glowing in faint, unnatural pulses. I froze. My breath hitched. They weren't reflections. They were alive. The air around us shifted again, growing colder, impossible in a place like this. My team exchanged wary glances, but no one spoke. That's the thing about soldiers. Fear makes us quiet, not loud. I took point, motioning for the others to follow. We advanced, every step slow, careful. The lights pulsed faster, almost reacting to us. The closer we got, the less real everything felt. The crunch of ash sounded distant, like we were moving underwater. Even the ground seemed to shift beneath my boots, spongy, unsteady, like it was breathing. Then, it happened. A whisper, low, distorted, cut through the silence. It wasn't coming from the radio. It wasn't from any of us. It came from below. Leave. The word echoed through the ash like thunder swallowed by earth. My heart stopped. My mouth went dry. I tried to speak, but no sound came out. Again, the whisper. Closer. Harsher. Leave. The lights brightened, pulsing violently now. Reality itself seemed to tremble. And that's when I knew we had crossed a line. This wasn't nature. This wasn't training. This was a warning. And for the first time in my life, I realized no amount of gear, no amount of firepower could save us from what was watching. The others stood frozen, eyes wide, faces pale behind their visors. I couldn't move either. The air was too thick, the fear too real. We weren't just walking through a volcanic field anymore. We had stepped into something ancient, something alive, and it had noticed us. And in that moment, I knew one thing for certain. We were not getting out of here the same. The air grew heavier with every step we took, thick enough to feel like it was pressing against my skin. The ash clung to us, mixing with sweat until it felt like armor made of dust. Each breath burned. The ground beneath my boots wasn't solid anymore. It shifted, soft and spongy, pulsing faintly as though something underneath was alive and breathing. Every sense in my body screamed that something was wrong. The deeper we pushed into the volcanic zone, the more the world around us began to warp. The horizon bent where it shouldn't. The glow from the lights ahead flickered in strange rhythms, not random, but deliberate, almost like they were syncing with my heartbeat. Every pulse echoed through the air, thudding against my ribs. It didn't just look alive. It felt alive. Then came the pull. That slow, sickening distortion, like the world was folding in on itself, dragging us toward the center. My watch had stopped ticking. My thoughts started blurring. Seconds stretched into minutes, minutes collapsed into seconds. Time didn't exist anymore. Everything felt too fast and too slow at once, as if we were stuck between moments that didn't belong to us. We moved in silence, weapons raised, scanning for threats. Then the ground split. A sharp crack tore through the stillness. The earth below us began to writhe, twisting and breaking apart like something was trying to claw its way out. I saw shapes beneath the surface, human, maybe, distorted silhouettes shifting in the molten glow, trapped just beneath the ash. My stomach turned, then came the voices. At first soft, barely more than whispers carried on the wind, but they grew louder, rising and falling like a chant. Not words, breathing, deep guttural rhythmic, coming from the ground, from the rocks, from the very air around us. It felt like the volcano itself was trying to speak. For the first time, I realized how small we really were. How powerless. The lights began moving again, faster now, darting across the terrain like hunting animals. They weren't random flickers. They were tracking us. Every movement we made, they mimicked. The team tensed. Even the toughest guys, the ones who never flinched under fire, were cracking. I saw it in their eyes, that primal fear you can't train out of a man. The air grew suffocating. Every breath was a fight. I could hear my heart pounding in my ears, loud and erratic. Around me, the team started to fall apart. Voices rose, confusion, panic, anger. The bond that kept us together as soldiers was fracturing under the weight of something none of us could understand. It wasn't just fear anymore. It was the slow unraveling of sanity. I knew the signs. I'd seen it before, men breaking in combat. But this was different. This wasn't panic. It was influence. Something invisible was getting inside our heads, twisting the fear, feeding on it. I wanted to call for an extraction. My training screamed at me to fall back, regroup, get my team out alive. But deep inside, I knew the truth. We were too far gone. Whatever this place was, it wasn't going to let us leave. The land itself was shifting, dragging us deeper. The ash no longer fell. It rose, spiraling like smoke around us. The ground throbbed like a heartbeat. The volcano wasn't erupting, it was awakening, and then I felt it. That presence. ancient, vast, watching. We had crossed into something that existed long before our species ever learned to name its fears. The volcano wasn't just a mountain. It was a vessel, a living, breathing entity that had been waiting for centuries. Waiting for us. The heat intensified, but it wasn't natural warmth. It came from something deeper, something malevolent. The air reeked of sulfur, sharp and choking, like the world itself was trying to push us away. My skin prickled. The whispers returned, louder this time, clearer. I thought it was the wind, but it wasn't. The sound wasn't moving through the air. It was inside it, embedded, vibrating through the space around us. Like every molecule was speaking in unison. That's when it hit me. We hadn't just stumbled into a geological anomaly. We had walked into something ancient, a will buried beneath centuries of ash. And it wasn't just awake. It was aware. The voices came first, low, guttural, and ancient. They didn't echo through the air but crawled inside our minds, whispering in a language older than humanity. I couldn't understand the words, but I could feel their meaning. They weren't warning us. They were claiming us, watching, waiting, letting us know we didn't belong here. The whispers grew louder, clawing at the edges of my sanity until it felt like my skull might split. My squad mates were breaking one by one. I could see it in their trembling hands and hollow eyes. This wasn't just a volcanic event. This wasn't nature. We were standing inside something alive, something ancient that had been buried beneath the mountain for centuries, and now it was awake. Hall was the first to lose it. 1 second he was beside me, eyes darting wildly like a trapped animal, and the next he was gone. No scream, no struggle, just vanished into the ash and dark. We called out, but the only thing that answered was the mountain's rumble, deep and hungry. It was as if the earth had swallowed him whole. The ground began to convulse beneath our boots. Lava split the earth in glowing cracks, cutting off every route of escape. But it wasn't the molten rock that terrified me. It was the feeling in the air. Something unseen moving within the ash clouds, circling us, waiting for the right moment to strike. And then it began. The others started to change. Slowly at first, just small things. Their eyes grew distant, their skin pale and ashen. Then came the cracks, jagged fissures forming across their faces and arms, glowing faintly like cooling lava. What emerged beneath wasn't blood or flesh, but something black and charred. It was as if the volcano wasn't just erupting. It was transforming them. They stopped being soldiers. They stopped being human. I ran, not because I was brave, but because every instinct screamed that staying meant death, or worse. Every step through the ash felt heavier, like the ground itself was trying to pull me down, to drag me into its molten heart. My team was gone now, either dead or something far worse. The base was collapsing, the sky glowing hellish red. I could feel the weight of the thing below pressing against my mind, whispering, calling me by name. It didn't want to kill me. It wanted to keep me. By the time I reached the last escape route, the roar of helicopter blades barely cut through the chaos. I looked back one last time and saw a figure standing in the firelight. Maybe Hall, maybe something wearing his shape. I didn't wait to find out. The mountain roared again, and I was lifted into the smoke-filled sky. From above, I watched as the land itself twisted and buckled, like the earth was breathing. I should have felt relief. I should have felt alive. But all I felt was emptiness. The ride was silent. The others stared blankly ahead, covered in soot and blood. No one spoke. No one cried. The air inside the chopper felt thick, like we'd brought the mountain's breath with us. Corporal Adams sat across from me, eyes fixed on the floor. When we touched down at the extraction point, he finally whispered, "The volcano isn't finished." And neither are we. At the time, I thought it was shock. Just another soldier pushed past his limit. But days later, his words wouldn't leave my mind. The doctor said it was PTSD, that the voices in dreams were trauma echoes. Maybe they're right. But every night, I still hear that guttural whisper crawling up from the depths. Sometimes, when the world goes quiet, I can feel it again. That same ancient pulse beneath my feet, like the earth is still alive, still watching. Maybe we never escaped. Maybe we just carried it with us. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's this. The mountain wasn't finished that day, and neither are we.